Hi, everyone. Welcome to Onekeelo Coaches Episode 2. Today we have a coach by the name of Sarah Taylor, who specializes in bodybuilding and general fitness. Onekeelo Coaches is a live stream series where we speak to some of the most inspiring and unique fitness coaches that are going to be on the platform of Onekeelo. Onekeelo is an online global fitness marketplace where we're going to be connecting fitness coaches all over the world with people looking to better themselves. And I plan on chatting to coaches all over the world who can support you and help you in any of your fitness goals. I believe there are way too many barriers at the moment when it comes to fitness coaches and connecting with clients and people who want to get fitter and stronger. And so I'm hoping to break those barriers down by creating this Onekeelo platform. So today, if you're watching live, feel free to make a comment or stream or share this link with others. And if you're watching in the future, continue to share and also make comments so that we can see who you guys would want coming up on future episodes. If you have any coaches that you know of that you feel like are really inspiring and people need to know about, reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube or anywhere so that I can connect with them and hopefully get them onto this live stream. So today we have Sarah Taylor. Let me welcome Sarah so she can give you a bit more insight about her and her experience. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. So fill everybody in a little bit about what area of fitness you specialize in.
Okay, there's a number of areas of specialization. I've got female fitness, obviously, competition preparation for bodybuilding is another one, general fat loss and weight loss, healing nutrition. I'm a nutrition specialist, a precision and nutrition certified coach, and an ISSN certified coach. So nutrition really is my thing. So yes, I definitely work with people in a healing modality as well. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner as well. So I guess my top four really are the weight loss, fat loss, competition preparation, and women's health. And sorry, healing nutrition, that's 5.
Yeah, absolutely. 5.
I'm a fitness coach. I'm not known for my maths.
No, brilliant. No worries at all. And so before we get really stuck into all of those areas of fitness, which sound really interesting, give the viewers a little bit of an insight as to, your history. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? How did you get into fitness?
Okay. Well, look, really, I guess I'm pretty much a very ordinary person. I grew up in England I'm one of four kids, I've got 3 brothers. So I was very much a tomboy. I at a very early age, somehow it seemed to be that boys had more fun than girls. And I actually decided at age 9, I wasn't going to be a girl anymore. I was going to be a boy. And I refused, I had my hair cut short. I refused to wear dresses. I was always climbing trees and playing football and stuff. I was going to be a boy like you are when you're age 9.
Yeah.
So I've always been active and sporty. As a kid, I was a very good gymnast and a very good swimmer. So I was doing gymnastics and swimming sort of pretty much every day before and after school. And then I guess through school, I progressed into, long distance running, cross country running. I got into basketball, which is a little bit ironic given the fact that I'm 5 foot squeak, a bit of a shorty. But I was always into all sorts of sports. I played a lot of badminton. I just sort of played squash. I dabbled with the gym really, I guess in my sort of early 20s, just because I happened to be one right next door to work, but I really had no clue about anything. So I was never really had any goals around fitness, but I was always just active. And then it really wasn't till I hit 40 was the turning point really. Oh, I was also into high altitude trekking. I really love high altitude trekking as well. So I've done the Inca Trail a couple of times, Mount Kilimanjaro, trekked for 30 days in Bhutan in the Himalayas. So look, wow. I really love all that as well. But yeah, look, age 40 was my turning point. I was newly single out of a 10-year relationship, and I set a goal to go and climb the highest mountain in South America, because you do. And I had a gym assessment, which put me squarely in the obese category. Now, my whole identity, I guess, for my whole life was geared up around the fact that I was fit and active. So being told I was obese just such a crashing destruction, I suppose, of my sense of identity, that it I really had no sense of who I was. Or I was really it kind of shattered really who I thought I was, and it's just set me out on a path. And I was just determined that basically, if I didn't have my health, I had nothing. That was the realization I came to. If I didn't have my health, I had nothing. And so I set about doing everything I could in my power to make sure I became that fit person again. So that's when I sort of set out getting fit to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And in the process, I lost 25 kilos without dieting. And from there, I went through depression. And once again, I focused really heavily on my fitness and nutrition because it was the only thing that was working. I really needed something positive to focus on. And it just happened to be my health and, my fitness and my nutrition. And in the process, I accidentally got in even better shape than when I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Did a photo shoot for my 42nd birthday to reward myself for not quitting. And the photographer said to me, like, are you doing the show? And I was like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. What do you mean? She said, the bodybuilding show. I was like, no, I've got no idea. I had no clue about bodybuilding. So I went along to show, totally freaked out, broke out in this rash, literally red spots all over my body. My trainer thought I had some kind of disease. And I asked him if I could do this thing called bodybuilding. And he said, well, yes, of course you could. So I said, great, we've got 10 weeks to the state show. And 10 weeks later, I won the state novice figure title in my first go. And then from there, I just fell in love with this thing, bodybuilding. I mean, it was just such an unexpected diversion of pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
I just fell in love with it. And unfortunately, after I won that show, and then I came third at national, third at international level at just my third show. So, I just went straight to the top pretty much. My body completely fell apart, double shoulder surgery, torn tendons in every limb. And I had to spend a whole year literally rebuilding my body from the ground up. So I literally had to learn how to stand on my feet and have the pressure on my feet. So a whole year of rehab later, got back into the bodybuilding, and at age 45, won the first 11 out of 11 of world titles. And by the age of 49, I'm now 21 times world bodybuilding champion.
Unbelievable. So there's a few really interesting things there to sort of pack down a little bit. Where to start? Where to start is the challenge.
Right. Yeah.
But essentially, look, let's start at probably one of what I believe is one of the biggest sort of positives and insights into your story is that this only happened in your 40s, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So most people thinking, oh, I'm at a certain age, I can't be really fit, I can't be really strong, and like bodybuilding and competitions is obviously the peak of that. You actually did this in your 40s. Yeah,
I didn't get started till I was 42. Like I say, at 40, I was classified as big. I was just a really super ordinary person. I work in IT, so I was a business analyst. Just go to work every day, go out for beers on a Friday night with my friends and that kind of stuff. It just happened that my partner was in the wine industry, so we used to go to some very, very spectacular wine industry dinners, and that's kind of how I got into the trouble that I got into. I mean, I was playing tennis for 4 hours a week at the time when I don't have a car, so I was walking or cycling everywhere. So I was still active. So in my head, I was this fit person.
Yeah.
But the reality was just this whole other thing. So like I say, that's why I say it was such a crashing, shattering reality check. So when my relationship ended and I was 40, and then all of a sudden, not only am I 40, but I'm 40 fat and frumpy. And I'm like, first thought was, shit, I've got no idea who I am anymore. I don't know who I am. I'm completely lost, directionless, and who's going to love me? I'm this old fat person. That's literally the thoughts that go through my head.
And is that what led you to the depression that you're speaking about?
Well, no, actually it wasn't. Like I say, the thing that kicked the whole thing off was it was never, ever about the weight loss. Let me be very, very clear.
Yeah.
My whole reason was never about weight loss. It was about finding who I was. It was about reestablishing my self-identity. Because like I say, in my head, I was a fit person. So being told I wasn't, I was a fat person. I didn't know who I was. And I needed that back.
Yeah, and who told you that? That was on an index, or was that a measurement that you did that came back with that reading?
Yeah, it was the full fat pinch.
Yeah.
Here's the chart. Here's the normal weight. Here's the overweight, and here's the obese. And I'm like, and you're there. And oh shit.
And so, have you ever? I hear this often when I'm listening to multiple people in terms of even professional trainers and stuff talking about, the BMI index and all of these measurements. And more often than not, I'm hearing that it's absolute rubbish. Like more often than not, it's do these measurements really, is it just that they're outdated? Like, why are these measurements coming back so inaccurate?
Look, the BMI is inaccurate because it doesn't take account of your composition. It literally just puts you on a scale and measures it. It's weight on a scale versus a height. So it doesn't take account of how much muscles you've got. I mean, Arnie used to regularly measure 40 on the BMI scale, which put him into the morbidly obese category. But you'd never say that Arnie was morbidly obese.
Definitely not. So is there any measurement types that are more accurate that people should be referring to, or is your ethos that people should just get that whole measurement scaling just out of their heads?
Look, it's any kind of measurement system is just a guideline, and a spot measurement in its own right is not a good measurement. You always need a measurement between 2 points at least, and preferably more, so that you can spot a trend. It's like with the coronavirus at the moment. You've got the every day you've got a different number. Now, if you just took one particular day and it happened to have 700 cases like we did the other day, you go, oh my God, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
That's one day. It's one measurement at one point in time. It doesn't tell you the whole picture. It's like getting on the scales every day. It changes every single day. But there's a myriad of factors that can feed into it. It's like, what did you eat yesterday? How hydrated are you? Did you sleep well? Are you stressed at work? There's so many factors that affect that one spot point taken in one snapshot in time. It's not a good measurement on its own right. You need a series of measurements across a period of time to give you a trend.
Yeah. And so you're
and look,
saying...
in that respect, even, BMI could be used, I suppose, if it was coming down. But like I say, if you've got somebody who's got a huge muscle amount on them, then it's not necessarily a good indicator it's not a good health indicator.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for the general population, it can be okay. Like I say, used in a series of measurements over a course of time.
Yeah, and you're saying that, and I think this area that we're going to go to is really important to a lot of people probably going through the fitness journey and looking at their weight. You spoke about how there was a point in time where you're going through a moment of depression. Do you mind speaking about that and how that impacted things for you?
Absolutely. We kind of veered off topic there.
No, good. It's great.
This is the thing, you see. So I set out basically becoming the fit person, and that resulted in climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. But it was after that I went through depression. There was a number of factors that fed into it. There was a couple, because I'd focused so heavily on my fitness, I'd literally neglected every other aspect of my life. I literally had complete tunnel vision. And that includes my friends as well. So there was a 6-week period over Christmas, 2010, I think it was, anyway, whatever, where just a series of bizarre things happened. I had a flood in my house. I had a tax audit. I lost all of my friends. I had to sell a house. And it was when I went to the doctor about the lump under my armpit that I broke down and was diagnosed with depression. Like I say, all of those things had literally happened in the space of 6 weeks. And it wasn't... So I guess it was the neglect that had caused the depression, and all of these things just sort of built up. And with my friend, what I found with my circle of friends was the fact that as I was getting fitter and fitter, and a lot of people come across this, is when they make a change, they find others around them kind of resist that change and start trying to sort of drag them back. So I'd been through all of that, in the process of getting sort of fitter and healthier and stuff. I'd cut back the amount of times I was going out socially, and I'd cut back the amount I was drinking. I never cut it out, but just cut back. And as I started to get results, I think, it starts to show other people around me how, I guess, static they are and how they're not achieving the same thing. Because a number of these people around me were the sort of people who'd go on all sorts of yo-yo diets. They'd try a diet and stuff like that, and they'd never get the results. But here was me, apparently not on a diet at all, achieving these results. And it caused a lot of friction and conflict. And there was a bizarre incident on New Year's Day. There was one particular person who'd been making comments, very, very deeply personal comments about my physique for about 6 months. And I hadn't said anything about it, but it all came to a head on New Year's Eve after a whole day of drinking. And in a flashpoint, I literally cut myself off from my entire social circle. And I have never seen them again. And when I did go to, I was referred to a psychologist, and I did go, and it was just, God, talk about depressing, dear me. It was the most stereotypically awful situation I've ever been in. You know, the therapist himself had this hand-knitted purple cardigan with nylon stretchy pants and sensible shoes, and we were sat in these wing-back chairs around a little round table with a lace doily on it. Lace doily. Seriously, the lace doily.
Not right for you.
And I actually tried not to burst out laughing. I was like, God, if this is depression, I'm not going to do it. And again, that was the thing. And then I referred back to my previous decision. It's like mental health is just as much part of health as is fitness, physical health. And I'm in the situation I'm in because of the choices I've made. And therefore, if I've made those choices, I can unmake those choices and make different choices. So once again, I completely took responsibility for being in the situation I was in, and I resolved if anyone's going to fix it, it was going to be me. And that's why I really was searching around. Like I say, like the whole rest of my life was kind of in ruins, sort of thing like this. And the only thing that was working, ironically, was the thing that had landed me in that situation in the first place, which was my fitness.
Yeah.
So that's why I doubled down on it. But one of the problems was because I hadn't had any kind of formal training in fitness at that point, I really was getting very curious. I was doing a lot of Googling around on the internet going best workout, best this, best that. And there's so much stuff. It was completely overwhelming. And when you're going through depression, everything's overwhelming. Like literally getting up and deciding what to have for breakfast is overwhelming. So I was starting to slide backwards, and I probably put on a couple of kilos. And the concept of sliding back to where I'd come from was just too awful to bear. It's like, I cannot have that. I cannot deal with that going wrong as well. That's why I doubled down on my fitness. And that's when I hired a personal trainer. And really that became my lifeline, that 1 hour a week with a personal trainer, where, if you like, this noise and this thinking and confusion was outsourced to somebody else. It just gave me space just for the stress levels and the overwhelm levels to just sort of like this. So the gym really became my happy space because I had somebody else doing the thinking, and I literally just had to turn up and do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what got me through.
And how long was the journey of starting with that personal trainer, did you say, to getting you to that first competition by accident and winning that title?
Well, literally, I started with the personal trainer, and probably within about 3 weeks, bear in mind, like I say, I got into the best shape of my life at 41 by climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I'd lost 25 kilos. I was like in amazing shape. But within 3 weeks of starting with this trainer, he'd actually got me lifting weights in a structured program for the first time ever. And I lost that 2 or 3 kilos that I'd put back on in the space of 3 weeks. And I was like, this is amazing. You know, it was a complete revelation to me. You know, I was doing this new kind of training, which I'd never done, and it was structured and processed, and he gave me a plan, and I followed the plan, and I was just getting in better shape. That's what made me start looking ahead. Like I say, the gym really became a happy space, and he actually had to kind of stop me going because I was trying to train sort of 2 times a week. He's like, no, you can't do that. You'll be overtraining. So it was probably 6 months before I did this photo shoot, and then another 10 weeks after that. So it was all up. It was about 8 months before I did that first competition, but I'd only been bodybuilding for 10 weeks.
Yeah. And how did you find your coach? What was your journey to find?
Oh, complete. And this is why I loved your platform, because, you know, finding my trainer was a happy accident. And I think a lot of people experience that. It just happened that I had a friend who'd also gone through depression, and I'd also seen her go through trainers and just sack them for no reason whatsoever. But she'd been working with this one guy for a year, and I thought, well, if this guy could last for a year with her, he's got to be good, you know. Because like I say, she was a little bit difficult, and so I begged her to give me his number. And unbeknownst to me, she'd been telling me what a nut job I was, I suppose. And he was very reluctant to take me on. But the second he met me, he was like, oh, hang on, this person I've been told I'm going to meet is not the person who's standing in front of me right then, because I literally went in and went, I need you to do this, 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 this. I was absolutely clear on what I wanted him to help me with. But it was a complete accident. And he could obviously see the potential in me. And once I started getting results, he could see where he could potentially take me. So like I say, the second I mentioned that about bodybuilding, he literally jumped around the gym in sheer joy, because as it turns out, and unbeknownst to me, he'd been wanting to figure out how he could raise the concept with me for months, because he'd seen the potential. So it was a total happy accident.
And bodybuilding, to people who don't understand it, like myself, you always think of these big, massive guys or girls, who are at these competitions, flexing their muscles on stage and doing what's your experience been with the outside world who isn't involved in bodybuilding, seeing what you're doing? Like you mentioned that a number of your friends, giving you a hard time about it. What is the experience of people who are doing bodybuilding, and, is there much stigma or bullying that comes with it?
Look, it is a very tight-knit community, and there's still here in Australia, I've found to be a lot of stigma about it. In fact, when I told my parents, and I was literally 3 days out from my very first show, I told my parents I was doing a bodybuilding competition. They refused to speak to me for 9 months. They were horrified. It's like, what on earth do you want with all of those muscles? Oh my God, you'll turn into Arnie, you'll be taking drugs and stuff like that. And they refused to speak to me. So, I really was on my own. Like I say, I totally cut myself off from my social circle because of this friction. So literally the only person I had in my corner supporting me was my trainer, so it made it incredibly difficult. And the other thing I noticed is that, how do I put this? In Australia, and I think to an extent actually not in the UK, I have competed in the UK. In Australia particularly, I think it's not so accepted, women having muscles. Now, here's the thing, and this is one fitness myth that must die. I have busted my ass for the last 8 years trying to put on as much muscle as possible. I don't know if you can see. Right now, I'm in COVID shape, so I'm not looking exactly like 21 times world bodybuilding champion, but I'm also not ginormous. And I have busted my ass to get as much muscle onto me as possible. It just isn't possible for women. I'm a natural athlete. Now, if you do take extra supplements, it is possible. But I'm a natural athlete, and you can see, I really look like a normal person, but I am 21 times world bodybuilding champion. You see, what the difference is, it's all an illusion. On stage, I'm actually at my smallest. I'm about 63 kilos now. On stage, I'm 51.5 kilos. And I have virtually zero fat on me. I get down to about 6% body fat, which is incredibly lean for a female. And, doctors and things would say it's medically unsafe, but I do it better than everybody because my nutrition is so good. But on stage, I look enormous because there's no fat on me. It's all an illusion. I look my biggest when I'm actually at my smallest. And quite often people meet me and the first thing they say to me is, oh, I thought you'd be bigger.
Yeah. And so that's a really interesting point you make. There's competition, and there's obviously everything before that. Tell us what that 3 months or 2 months or whatever that sort of little extreme period is leading up to a competition. What does a person go through in that lead up?
Well, I'm going to pull you up on the fact that it's extreme. If you do an extreme competition prep, particularly for a female, in my category, I'm in the biggest, most muscular category. So there's very, very few women who will do a 2 or 3 month prep for figure. For the bikini categories, you should be able to hold bikini condition pretty much all year round. So the bikini girls can get away with a sort of 2 or 3 month prep and still look great. But for figure, it's just not possible. I generally do a 6 or 7 month prep. And I take the approach of, like, my approach is probably one of the safest out there because it's fat loss by 1,000 tiny little cuts, which means that I'll probably add 30 seconds of dynamic activities such as dead ball slams or battle ropes or sled pushes or squat jumps between my sets of lifting the weights. Just enough to sort of get my heart rate up a little bit. And then I'll add another 30 seconds and another 30 seconds and another 30 seconds. And with my diet, I might cut out 5 almonds. I might go from a full banana to half a banana. You know, it's 1,000 little tiny tweaks. So I never do anything extreme. It just takes a lot of focus and a lot of discipline. That's the key. It's this hyper focus and this discipline. But here's the thing. Again, I do it very, very differently. I've also figured out how to fit this competition preparation and be this super focused, disciplined person within my normal lifestyle. So I'll go out for burgers and chips and ice creams, and I go out for breakfast 2 or 3 times a week. In fact, there was one competition season when I was in my best shape ever in 2017. I actually had to pull myself up because I was like, am I actually on comp prep? You know, I figured it out. I was actually on comp prep 3 days a week. Because one day I went out for my burgers and chips and ice cream, and 3 days a week I was going out for whatever cafes in Melbourne, having pancakes for breakfast or smash abo and whatever the hell I liked for breakfast.
Yeah, and so tell me about some of those myths, because people like, you know, you see like the Rock's diet, you know, people are looking at all of these like, you know, celebrity, big, muscly people, and, you know, you look at like tennis players, what they eat after a game, or football players, you know, and they're eating pizzas and burgers and all this sort of stuff. So there's a myth out there that people believe that if you're working out that hard, that you actually need to eat more or want to eat more, and rubbish doesn't really matter. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, if you're working out, if you are an elite athlete and you are working out incredibly hard, yes, you do need the food. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter what diet style you follow. It needs to fit with the goals that you currently have in terms of your fitness. Now, there are elite marathon runners who follow the keto diet. Most marathon runners don't. They follow a very high carb diet. Okay, a lot of bodybuilders, they cut out carbs completely, but there are also bodybuilders who are vegan. There are bodybuilders who do keto. There are bodybuilders who do paleo. Food is just a tool to do a job. So pick the right tool, just like a toolbox. You know, you wouldn't pick a hacksaw to hammer in a nail. Wrong tool, wrong job. So food is just a tool. As far as I'm concerned, food is just a tool to do a job. So you just pick the right tool for the right job for you. And the best one is the one that you can stick with consistently.
And you talked about at the start a handful of things that you specialize in. And in previous conversations with you, you've highlighted the nutrition as being one of your superpowers when it comes to training and helping people. Yep. Talk a bit about your experience with food for other people. Like you just spoke about it a little bit now, but essentially what makes you different from the thousands of other people preaching about, food and how it can affect you?
Look, I've always had a very high awareness of food, particularly in a healing modality. I'm a full-blown celiac, and I'm lactose intolerant and nightshade intolerant. So I've always had a very high awareness of using food to manage a condition. I have asthma and eczema. And like I say, I've always managed that through food. Completely by accident, I've found what foods worked for me. And this is how I also lost the weight loss. It was by paying attention to the foods I was eating, okay, and paying attention to the physical sensations of those foods. So if a food made me feel heavy or bloated or sleepy or tired or something like that, then I'd steer away from it. If a food made me feel light and energetic, I'd eat more of it. And just by doing that, and I did actually log it, and kind of journal it to an extent as well to start with. But once I'd really learned what foods work for my body, it just naturally led me towards a much more sort of whole, minimally processed foods kind of diet. So I eat very intuitively because I know what works for my body, because I spent the time to learn my body, if you like. But once I got into the bodybuilding, and all of a sudden I saw, I was on my first comp prep diet, and I did have somebody help me with that. That switched on the light bulbs and set off this absolute furious curiosity about food as a tool to do a job. And literally from there, I've probably spent about 5 or 6 years experimenting on myself with pretty much every diet style you can think of out there. I've done it just to see what it would do. But I always revert to my intuitive way of eating.
Yeah.
Okay. So having done all of these diets, and all these different styles and things like that, I've kind of gone through sort of, I guess, 3 phases where I didn't know what I didn't know. Then I tried everything, and now I know what I know. And food and diet has gone from being incredibly simple. Like I say, it was very simple when I was just learning my body, what works, what doesn't work. Then I went through this phase of trying all of these diets, and there's all these complicated rules and blood type diets, and you mustn't eat this and you mustn't eat that, and paleo, you mustn't eat this. All of these diets, they have these rules. It overcomplicates stuff. And then when I started doing all these diets, really there's a couple of common threads. It helps people pay attention to the food that they're eating. Most of the diets that actually work on the long term are based on whole, minimally processed, fresh foods. And that's pretty much it. So then I went, well, that's what I was doing before I tried all of these things with all of these complicated rules. And so having done them, I know them. But now I'm just going to go back to what works, which is paying attention to what you eat and focusing on real, whole, minimally processed foods.
And is that your recommendation for people sort of starting up on that journey of what do I need to eat to
Yeah. So look, there's some very simple things you can do. It's like you can have a meal or something like that and journal how it makes you feel. How does it make you feel emotionally? How does it make you feel physically? Do you feel tired? Do you feel energized? Pay attention to the sensations. And then, once you've started doing that for a couple of days, you'll start seeing some patterns. So for example, I started finding that when I first started this, I started finding that potatoes, I'd feel a bit sluggish and heavy after potatoes. Okay, whatever. I'd feel a bit bloated after eating bread. Even though it was gluten-free, I'd still feel a bit bloated. So I just steered away from them.
Yeah.
Now it turns out that I'm nightshade intolerant, and white potatoes are a nightshade. So it's like, so I kind of diagnosed myself with nightshade intolerance about 10 years ago, but I didn't really think of it until all of a sudden tomatoes started making my face puff out, and so did capsicums make my face puff out. They're also nightshades. Okay. But I'd kind of gone away from white potatoes already I'd still have them a little bit, but because they make me feel sort of a bit bloated and stuff like that, I just didn't really have them very often.
And are there any?
Your body really will tell you what it needs.
Yeah. Are there any safe and normal ways of shortcutting that? Like is there any like blood tests or any tests that you can get that can sort of shortcut what you are and aren't intolerant to, or what types of food will help you more?
Yes. Look, there are a number of. Of course, you can go to sort of a nutritionist and you can get like sort of allergy tests. And things like that. I mean, there are DNA tests you can do out there. One of my clients, she's just had one of these sort of online DNA test things. But now all of a sudden she's allergic to about 140 things. Yeah. I'm like, well, really?
That's the challenge.
Yeah. So you can get these false positives, and that can actually make things even more complicated. And look, people who get who do go to nutritionists or, people who really understand nutrition, the most common practice is putting them onto an elimination diet. There's this very standard thing you can do, put people onto an elimination diet, which goes for 3 months. And it's designed to basically take out a lot of the very common allergic triggers. Wheat obviously being one of them, things like eggs, mushrooms, strawberries, even prawns, garlic. And all of these can be indicators of different sort of allergies. And then you gradually, after 3 months, as long as your sort of symptoms have dissipated, then you start reintroducing these foods one thing at a time and seeing how things react. So look, even if you did a standard elimination diet through a nutritionist, it could take sort of 6 to 9 months before you find a result. Now, like I say, I guess I was lucky because I already had a high awareness of food as a healing modality anyway, through my own experience with sort of asthma, eczema, and celiac. But it didn't really take me long. It probably took me a couple of months to really sort of dial it in and going, okay, well, look, white potatoes, bread, rice, and pasta, I just feel bloated and horrible. Okay, but can't be bothered with those anymore. So it probably took about 2 months.
Yeah. And let's get. I reckon we get stuck straight into the real bodybuilding, questions and information because I'm really intrigued by it.
Yeah.
You spoke about the competition being a bit of an illusion. You obviously get yourself to a point where you got the least amount of fat on you. You're looking your best. It's just a moment in time where you're at your absolute peak. Something that I always think about when I think of bodybuilding competitions is the fake tan. You're quite pale at the moment, so you're not naturally that dark skin. But everybody you see on stage is dark skinned and tanned up. What's the reason for that? Does that pop the muscles out or?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this is why I freaked out when I went to that first competition. I literally went backstage, and all I could see was these, ginormous, huge, muscly, chocolate brown women with fake boobs, fake nails, fake tan, fake eyelashes. The whole thing was fake, sparkly stripper heels. That's why it just totally freaked me out. But you're absolutely correct. You do need the tan because the lights on stage are so harsh that if you didn't have it, you would actually look like a corpse and you wouldn't be able to see the muscle definition. So having that huge, that incredibly dark tan with a little bit of sheen over the top of it. There's a number of products that you can just get a little bit of a shine, or some people just use just get a cheap cooking oil spray and spray it on them kind of thing. But it plays with the lights and it's what brings the definition out.
And so I'm not experienced enough. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of what I'm just seeing is a lot of the natural bodybuilding competitions where it's more, it's not this over the top extreme muscly body. It's more of a natural look. And
Yep.
so in areas like that where you're trying to really promote your natural body, is it not something that the industry should think about when it comes to changing that? So let's create lighting or something that you don't need to sort of change your skin tones and colors in order to stand out?
I have no idea how you do that.
So it's literally like that. That's just the way it is. And so therefore, in order to combat that and to stand out on stage, you need that darker skin tone.
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess if you talk to somebody from the theatre, somebody who acts on stage in the theatre, when they have the makeup and stuff, it probably looks quite natural on stage. But when you go backstage, they look like a clown. It's the same thing with the makeup on stage for women, obviously. Backstage, you look like a complete clown. But everything on stage, because like I say, because the light, I don't know why stage lighting has to be so harsh, but I guess it's to. Well, yes, it's probably something to do with the contrast. Like I say, I'm not a stage lighter. I don't know why they have to do it, but I can't imagine how else you would do it.
And so you specialize in posing and in looking at what judges are looking for in terms of, obviously picking the winners of the competitions. What do the judges look for, and what is the criteria when doing a bodybuilding competition?
Okay. Well, I mean, I've been a judge for 3 federations. I'm a current judge for 3 federations. I've also been posing coach for 4 of the federations. I just want to say that bodybuilding is a bit like boxing in a way. There's lots of different organizations. And there's 2 main streams. You've got your natural streams, which is drug tested, and then you've got your other streams that are not drug tested. Now, whilst I'm 21 times world bodybuilding champion in naturals, I have done the non-natural streams, and the best I've got was 3rd at the Arnold Classic, which I was stoked at, by the way, absolutely stoked at. But the difference between a natural organization and a non-natural is chalk and cheese. But in terms of the judging criteria, for men, there's 4 main categories. There's fitness model, which is kind of looking great on a beach. There's the physique, which is that sort of really sort of super tapered triangular look. Then there's classic physique, which is judged by height and weight, or you have to fit into a height weight criteria, and it's a hark back to the sort of classics 50s and 60s looks. And then there's bodybuilding. Now for women, you've generally got bikini, you've got sports model or fitness, and then you've got the figure, and you've got physique. And each one gets sort of more muscular and leaner as you get from bikini through to the physique. Now there's all of the different organizations have variations on a theme of the criteria, but across all federations and all categories, male and female, there are 3 core there are 3 core criteria of balance, symmetry, and proportions in your physique. There's also muscularity and conditioning. Sorry, there's actually 5. Those 5 criteria are across all categories, and it's just different levels of each of them. Particularly the muscularity and conditioning, that's really the variables. Balance, proportion, and symmetry are pretty much the same across all of them. You're looking for the most balanced physique, the most symmetrical physique. And then, depending on the category, you're looking for different levels of muscularity and leanness or conditioning. So that's pretty much how it works. And then the posing is how you show yourself off. And you can have the best physique on stage, but if you can't show it off and your posing's diabolical, then the chances are you're not going to do as well as your body deserves. Yeah. So the posing is a very, very critical final element to your whole stage performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does it work? Is it works in like sort of sporting stages? Like there's multiple people on the stage, they're all posing, the judges pick, those 2 go to the next stage. Is that how the competition works?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, yes and no. Some organisations have what's known as a 2-stage format. So they'll have what's known as pre-judging. So everybody's on the stage and they get judged, and then they have a final show, which is much more sort of fun and informal for sort of audiences at night. But a lot of them still just have one format. And all of the categories have what's known as mandatory poses. So these are a series of poses that the judges call for that everybody has to do. And that's how the judges compare you. Yeah. So you can have a lineup of 10 people, they're all doing their front pose. Then they'll turn to the right. Then they always turn to the right. So you have 4-quarter turns, because then the judges can see your physique from 360 degrees. And then the more muscular categories will also have additional poses. Like there'll be, for men in the bodybuilding, there'll be the front double bicep. Then there'll be the rear double bicep. So this is where the judges get to see the guys, hamstrings, glutes, back, and the biceps. Then there'll be your abs. Then you'll have to show off your thighs, chest, triceps. Those are all common mandatory poses. And each competitor will do them at the same time so that the judges can compare them all in one go. Then there are additional sort of elements to your stage performance. Some, particularly the female categories, they'll have what's known as a stage walk, which is where the competitor walks a particular shape or goes to particular points on the stage and does a couple of poses. And that's much more free form. So that's much more to enable the person to bring out their personality and be a little less formal. And the guys can get quite creative. They can get some very artistic poses in their stage walks. Another sort of one of the other sort of rounds is a what's known as posing round, and you do that to music. All the guys bodybuilding, they have a posing routine. So they do 60, 90 or 3 minutes to music where they free pose, make up their own poses. Okay. So that's the posing round.
And are you seeing any trends in the bodybuilding industry? Is there anything sort of standing out that's coming through, or more modern, or different types of people?
Yeah, absolutely. When I started, the shows were much smaller, and then probably about sort of 2 or 3 years in, it really just seemed to take off. Like numbers started increasing and just going absolutely nuts. In fact, there was one Australian national show that had over 800 competitors, which was insane. And Australia, I actually believe Australia is leading the world in the bodybuilding, because we do some very, very creative things. I mean, we're one of the only countries in the world that have all-female organizations. A good friend of mine has an all-female pro show, which is open to all professionals from all other organizations, and it's literally the only one in the world. And the trend really has been the growth in the bodybuilding industry has really been from the softer categories, the much more approachable, attainable looks. So women, that's bikini and fitness models, and men, particularly the physique. Again, so fitness models for men, and also the physique, which is this. Hang on, I need to, this real sort of triangle. Sorry, this real sort of triangular look.
Yeah.
So in the men, the fitness and physique categories have really taken off because they're much more aesthetic, they're much more attainable, and bikini and fitness in the women, again, much more aesthetic, much more attainable. And those are the ones that have really taken off.
Yeah. Trickiest question you might get throughout this whole stream is, what weighting would you give to food versus the working out versus sleep versus mentality? Like, where do you see on the importance scale those different elements of getting you to that final stage?
Okay, so there's a mantra in the bodybuilding world: eat, sleep, train, repeat.
And that's in level of hierarchy.
Yes. And they're in that reason for an order. If you don't eat right, you're not going to be able to sleep right. And you need to sleep right in order to recover and grow your muscle, and also have the energy to train right.
Perfect. And you mentioned earlier in this chat around how your trainer was actually pulling you back because you're trying to train too much. A lot of people sort of think that. They're like, well, the more I train, the bigger I'll get, the stronger I'll get. Talk through that a bit. It actually has some negative impacts if you do too much.
Yeah, look, this is the thing. It's not how long you're in the gym for. You know, there's plenty of people out there who you know, they're very proud of the fact that they spend an hour and a half in the gym. You're doing it wrong, really. I only do 45 minutes. You can get great results in 30 minutes a day, depending on what your goals are, of course, and what your sport is. But if we're talking specifically about bodybuilding, you can get some spectacular results in 30 minutes a day. I do 45, which is probably optimal, particularly for a natural athlete. You do have to think about the time, because once you start training for more than about an hour, your cortisol levels start to spike, and cortisol is a key muscle breakdown hormone. So once you get over that hour, your muscle protein breakdown levels actually increase. So for a natural athlete, you don't really want to train more than that hour. Keep it under an hour. 45 minutes is optimal. And then, you know, get some sort of nutrition, particularly protein and carbohydrates, in as soon as you can after your workout, if you're a natural athlete. But yeah, it's what you do in the gym rather than the time you spend in the gym.
Yeah. And would you walk out of nearly every session totally strapped of like energy? Like, do you go to that point in the 45 minutes? Or
again, it depends on the style of training you're doing at the time, and your goals.
Yeah, so this is where it becomes so important.
Absolutely.
That you have that professional who can tell you, on this day you need to go to this level, and on that day that level, and these are the sort of exercises and body parts. Because if you go into the gym yourself and you're like, oh well, you know, Sarah told me 30 to 45 minutes is the ideal time, so I'm just going to go in there and go crazy every time I go in. That's not necessarily going to work for you either.
A well-structured program beats time in the gym every single time, and also the intensity that you work out with also works as well. But like I say, it depends on the goal. If you're a power lifter, you're probably going to lift a weight and then sit around resting for 5 minutes, and then you'll lift a weight again for maybe 1 or 2 times. Now, I work with a different style of training where I do, 3 to 4 steps, 8 to 12 reps, and I superset things. So I do one exercise immediately followed by the next, and I do 8 exercises a workout. It's a much more intense style of training, and I only rest for 2 minutes. Yeah. So, and then when I'm in comp prep, then I add in all of this active rest as well. Like I say, sled pushes, squat jumps, dynamic, plyometric lunges, all sorts of stuff. So when I'm on comp prep, as I get towards the end of my comp prep, I'm still working for 45 minutes, but within that 45 minutes, I've also done like a 10 to 12 minute high intensity interval session.
Yeah.
And that's where I get my fat loss from. But it energizes me because I'm not spending hours and hours and hours training. I've still got plenty of energy.
Speaking of HIIT workouts and, all these different exercises, what exercises do your clients hate the most?
Legs day. It's not just one. It's legs day.
I think everyone hates legs day.
Everybody hates legs day, and it shows. It really does show.
What are your go-to killer leg exercises? Do you have those? Do you have like some Sarah signature exercises?
Look, I don't have any sort of signature ones. I do like the incline leg press. I think it's incredibly versatile. I actually do like Bulgarian lunges, which is a single leg lunge with one leg raised on a bench or something like that, because you might, any time of training that you do, particularly if it's bodybuilding, even just from a functional perspective and an overall general health perspective, you need to do some sort of unilateral work. That means doing stuff on one leg, because it'll help you build up stabilizer muscles, which is actually going to keep your body in alignment, so that you're actually less prone to injury.
Yeah. What is the biggest fitness myth that you hate and why?
I think I've already probably covered one of them, which is the fact that, you know, women shouldn't lift weights because they'll get huge and bulky. No, it has to die. Like I say, I've busted my ass for 8 years to get as big as possible, and you can see right now that I'm just not Arnie.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's not going to happen.
So lift weights
unless you're enhanced.
Yeah,
so that's probably one of my biggest ones.
Yeah, and what is it about lifting weights for women that actually help?
Oh my God, there's so many benefits for women lifting weight. And here's the thing: for me, I've already said that I'm lactose intolerant, so I don't have dairy. Since I started lifting weights, my bone density has increased to that of a 35-year-old. I'm 51. My bone density is that of a 35-year-old, and here's why it's important to me: it's because osteoporosis runs down the female line of my family. I watched my grandmother literally crumble away from the inside, and it was devastating. And my mother's very frail. You know, she's getting increasingly frail now as well. I'm the same build as both my grandma and my mum, so it runs down the female line. I'm determined not to go the same way that my grandma did, and it's incredible. You know, the science behind it is irrefutable. Everybody, as they get older, should actually do some sort of resistance training, not just women, but men as well. Men get osteoporosis too. And lifting some sort of heavy weight, it forces not only your muscles to adapt, so it keeps your muscles stronger, and it forces the bones to adapt, which is why your bones stay stronger. So as you get older, it's incredibly important to have that stimulus. You know, really why old people get frail is because of muscle loss, muscle wastage through lack of stimulation. And also a lot of elderly people, because they don't have that sort of, I guess, that higher rate of metabolism and that muscle mass and stuff, they can't eat as much. So they're actually malnourished.
Yeah, fair enough.
So keeping active, lifting something heavy 2 to 3 times a week is going to make you healthier for the rest of your life. Like Brilliant. I say, even though I've achieved so much in it, I'm never going to quit lifting weights, because I do not want to be my grandma. Health. I do not want to crumble away from the inside.
Absolutely. If there was only one exercise that people could do for the rest of their lives, what would you make it and why?
Oh, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
One exercise. I'd actually have to say walking.
Yep.
That might sound a little bit strange, but everybody can walk, and the more you walk, the healthier you'll be.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but mentally too. It's incredibly good for your mental well-being as well. Getting outside in nature and going for a walk. Like there's no barriers to walking. So just from a pure overall well-being perspective, I would say walking.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And last question, what is your most valuable piece of fitness advice that you can share with everybody?
Why? Why are you doing this? If you don't understand why you're doing something, you won't be able to do it consistently. And this is why a lot of people, they start an exercise program and they stop and they start and they stop. Same thing with diets. They do a diet, they lose, I want to lose some weight. They lose the weight. Then they put it back on. You have to understand why you're doing this.
Yeah, good point.
Simon Sinek said it. Always start with your why. People don't get what you're doing, they get why you're doing it. And when people sort of say, oh, I want to get fit and lose 5 kilos. Well, why? Well, because I want to get fit and lose 5. There's always a deeper reason. So when people sort of say that they want to get fit or lose weight or something like that, that's really just a superficial surface Band-Aid solution for a deeper symptom. Until you start asking really why you're going to do it. And there's an exercise that I actually do get a lot of my clients to go through. It's called 5 Whys. Why do you want to lose weight? Oh, because I'll look better. Well, what happens when you look better? Well, I'll feel proud of myself. Why? You keep digging. Why?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you want to lose weight? Because I want my clothes to fit better. Why do you want your clothes to fit better? Because I'll feel proud of who I am. Why do you want to feel proud of who you are? Because living in a way that makes me feel proud means that I'm going to live a long and healthy life, and I'll be a role model for my kids.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, the why. I like that answer. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today. Everybody out there watching this, if Sarah is a coach that you want to work with, head on to the onekeelo.com platform. Sarah will be on there, and you'll be able to work directly with her. So Sarah, thanks heaps.
Awesome.
Look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Thanks very much. Lovely to be here. Take care.